Anyway, before I begin, I would like to thank Lionel for that slightly worrying introduction. I also like to thank Derek Corbett for all the sort of running around that he managed to do before I got here. And I will extend something in the form of a thank you to former school captain Paul McIntosh, who has soaked the Navy and rum tonight, as far as I can gather, at Trafalgar night dinner, who has dropped me in it yet again, 35 years after the last time he dropped me in it. And now I am totally dropped in it, and I can't get away because I'm in the middle of the room, so I will give a speech. Well, I've given advice about giving this address, and I was told to be light-hearted and amusing. Light-hearted and amusing. Light-hearted and amusing. Mention at least some teachers, presumably avoiding slander. Try and relate what happened at school to what I ended up doing with my life after leaving the Prince of Wales in Moss Street on the day I got my A-level results, which was the last time I saw Paul McIntosh, or I think it was the last time I saw Paul McIntosh. Indeed, it's the last time I saw most people, having sort of left Liverpool shortly after that. I will do my best. As Lionel pointed out, I'm Professor of Medical Humanities and Gothic Literature. I specialise in the history of medicine, particularly Victorian medicine, which means I spend my life with hysterics, lunatics, occasional mad women and suicides. Nice people often, and of course I do cadaver work as well. And also I'm a specialist in Gothic literature, and Bram Stoker was my specialist author when I wrote my PhD. And I owe a great deal of why I ended up writing a PhD on Bram Stoker and specialising in horror fiction to my experience at Shaw Street, or rather to what I was not told to do when I was in Shaw Street. And this goes back to the days of taking English when I was a somewhat slimmer and slightly fresher-faced sixth former, under the likes of J.A. Pritchard, John Cowan and John Gribble Destin, and I hope your ears are burning as I say this, a lot of you. Basically, because I was caught with a copy of a dodgy book, dodgy book. It was called The Devil Rides Out by Dennis Wheatley. Well, that kind of thing you used to get was the back cover of the Radio Times. A sinful Kidron binding, it said. Cheap BBC rubbish. And I was caught with this by John Cowan. Apparently Mr. Pritchard thought it was hilariously funny. Mr. Cowan, on the other hand, thought this was almost blasphemy, not for the religious content, but for its total lack of literariness. You can't read that. I'm reading it, you can't read it. You've got to go out and read proper stuff. You've got to go out and read Joseph Conrad, The Secret Agent. You've got to go out and read Virginia Woolf, Tomb of the Lighthouse, and then Grimbo threw Persuasion at me by Jane Austen, and I fell under the weight of it. But I still kept reading dodgy horror books. And there's apparently an alleged bet. Now, I don't know if this is true, because the gentlemen in question are not here, and one of them is not telling the line in contact with. But apparently that Grimbo and John Cowan had a bet that I would completely flunk my A-levels. Grimbo reckoned I was going to flop it in English for being too unorthodox and too freaky. John Cowan thought I was probably going to get away with it. I got away with it. So maybe that's the way it works. But anyway, I ended up at UEA Norwich, along with a lot of people who ended up at UEA Norwich under the influence of a certain English master. Doing well, wasn't it? You know, we sort of got around the UEA types. And ironically, that was John Cowan's alma mater, and it was one of the few places in Britain at the time, in fact, one of only two places in Britain at the time, you could actually do Gothic literature. So I ended up writing Gothic literature, being sent there by someone who didn't want me to do Gothic literature in the first place. So madly, he hoisted himself on his own petard, wherever your petard happens to be, and that was the beginning of it. I went there rather than Oxbridge or a respectable red brick in the Midlands or the North, and there I was. I don't think he ever found out what I did my PhD. In fact, I don't think anybody at college ever found out what I actually wrote my PhD on, except for the late lamented Scoutmaster Alan Scott, who rather wonderfully on one occasion sort of just bumped into me in town and said, "What are you doing now?" I said, "I'm writing a PhD." "Great, what are you writing on?" I said, "I'm writing about Bram Stoker in Gothic fiction." And he laughed uproariously. 10 whole minutes he laughed. 10 whole minutes, exactly worth going from kind of getting another cup of coffee, sitting it down in front of him until he finished. And he said, "Oh, go on, now, tell me what you're really writing about." You're writing about Shakespeare, aren't you? No. Write background stuff. There you go. So, that's the sort of the background to it. But I think I actually owe a little bit more to the old school than being prohibited from reading scurrilous literature and dubious horror fiction in my teenage years. Because it was in the school library, that rather wonderful environment of glass doors, creaky hinges, and a portrait that you wondered how it stayed on the wall behind the librarian's desk. It was in that rather wonderful environment I found the first 2 books that seriously interested me in the topic. And one of these was a rather lurid Hamlin paperback from 1968. I actually traced a copy of it since then, called Supernatural Stories for Boys. A rather luridly illustrated thing with a policeman being menaced by an 18th century dandy on the cover. Google it, it's a wonderful thing. Which started me getting interested at the age of about 11, and then at the age of 13 I discovered the absolutely glorious collected ghost stories of M.R. James, famous Protestant Eton, Master of Kings, and writer of great books, not just on ghosts, but actually on railways and abbeys. And there I was. I took the book home from the library, having made sure I booked it out. I was actually a librarian for 5 years, so it gave me a lot of. I could book books out when I was in. Just take about tons of books. Everybody else got 550. And James's ghost stories really appealed to me because they were written all for the choristers of King's College, Cambridge. James used to have these Christmas parties, and all the choristers would be in there. He'd light candles around the room, and then he'd tell them a ghost story, give them mince pies and probably illicit sherry. And then they would all creep off to their chorister beds and probably shake all night and worry about what they'd just learned. But there it was, this world in James's ghost fiction. Just imagine it. Dark, long, echoey corridors, high ceilings, dusty rooms, libraries full of obscure books, and eccentric scholarly characters wandering around in age-worn gowns. It sounded very familiar. It sounded damn familiar. In actual fact, I found myself in a very, very similar environment to the one I was in every day. No disrespect to the caretaker who did try to keep that corridor fairly tidy. So there it was, the beginning of the way it works. So that's really how I got interested in ghost stories and ghost fiction. But at this point, I want to leave myself behind and travel back imaginatively. This is the sort of fairy tale bit now. So just bear with me, I'm being creative. Travel back imaginatively to a certain rather imposing and rather large building on Shore Street, which we all rather know so well. And I think my first memory of it was a rather odd thing. I was walking past as a child, I was so big, very, very small, I was about 4. I wasn't always that short. And I looked up outside, and I thought, God, there was a bloody castle, you know, hell's that, you know. Trying to explain to my mother that I was terrified of this place. She said something along the lines of, "Well, you will be." She had plans. She had very big plans. This was sketched in years ago, but there I was, and that was the beginning. And that castle thing stuck in my mind. Right, funnily, on a 1978 school visit to Glasgow, which I suspect nobody here went on. We did a 1978 trip to Glasgow, and I remember Mr. Butler, the metalwork master, actually describing the building to the Lord Provost of Glasgow as the castle in Shore Street. I thought, I bet you were scared when you walked past it too, you know. But there it was, that kind of sort of ambience came with it. Why did I end up doing Gothic literature? I think I know. It's the fear, it's the dark, it's the corridors, it's the eccentrics, it's the whole theatre of the entire experience. I think that's a shame that people don't have that kind of experience now. We live in a world that's really quite horribly dull by comparison to the world I think we all have lived in. Whenever we lived in it, whether it be in the 1970s or indeed in the 30s, the 40s or the 50s, not forgetting the 60s of course. But next time I saw it, open day, that day before you go up in the autumn, you're ushered into that assembly hall and you feel very, very, very small. In those days the assembly hall was in rather decorative pastel colours before it started to look like something from the Great Western Railway and became brown and cream. And there was a sort of dusty smell that I couldn't identify. I think it might have been canteen. But there was a certain sort of feeling again, what am I getting myself into? And then you get the disappointment of knowing you can't use the front door for the first 6 years. And then comes the thought, is it worth being late so that you can use the door before the 6 years? And then you try it, and you never do it again. Because it isn't, because you have to walk in front of all those people watching you. And everybody knows it's the walk of shame. Fair enough. So what was it? It was a place of knowledge. But to me it was also a place of unending and enduring mystery. That sense of mystery and uncanniness, I think, endured right through to my sixth form years. Not just the occasional tales of ghosts. I think every school has ghost stories. Every school has a reputedly haunted place. Or if you put your finger on top C in the piano and scream, you know, something will come up through the floor. It's probably the deputy head or something. But, you know, there's always a rumour like that. I did check out some of the ghost stories, and I think some of you probably don't know that I actually did Most Haunted Live at St George's Hall a few years ago with Derek Cora and Fielding, and we didn't find any ghosts there either. But there was the ghosts I was told about. Apparently, in the art room on the top floor, if you sat in there at night, what were you going to be in there at night for? If you sat in there at night, who was there at night? Who stayed after school that long? All night. The floorboards would move with the sight of silent feet crushing them down, one by one by one. I think I know the spirits that were involved in that one. The skeleton in the biology lab. Yeah. I was confidently told on the first day, this was after I apparently had been put down the toilet, someone had flushed the lavatory on my head, I'd had to recite the alphabet backwards in Latin, Greek, probably Hebrew as well, I can't remember. All those things apparently happened to you when you were in newt. And I got told, the bones in the biology lab is a murderer who was hanged. I was desperate to find out. So, armed with a confederate who is not here, who kept doubts for me, and looking out to make sure that Mr. Graff was not present, I entered said lab. I fell over several things because the lights were out. In fact, several things were broken, and I never got blame. Until I got to the murderer, who had a bump through his head, and I thought, I'm surprised you're dead. And I moved his jawbone, and he didn't say anything. And then I looked behind him to find the little plaque that said, hanged in 1910. It said, made in Pakistan, Pakistani Industries Limited, 100% nylon. And next year I told the story about the murderer who'd been hanged to the next lot of first years, and so it went on forever and ever. I think better tales were told at the scout camp in Columbendie. That was always a great thing on the last night. It was always the night the clocks went back, so you get an extra hour's sleep, so we wasted it telling ghost stories. But the ghost story tradition was alive and well in dormitories at Columbendie. Dark. So, ghosts. Yeah, fair enough. But I want to move away from ghosts, because there's no such thing as ghosts, we think. And I want to talk about secret geography instead. What the hell's secret geography? Secret geography is that geography that lives beneath the familiar geography of the places we know. It's the alternative space. It's the unknown that lives within the known. It's the, I suppose, the counter place of our familiar. It's uncanny. And what amazed me in all the time I wandered around Short Street was how many rooms there were that didn't actually really ought to be there. We knew about all the classrooms. We knew some of them had sort of slightly strange reputations. You never went into the sixth form common room under any circumstances because God knows what was going on in there. Or you didn't go in so-and-so's room because something might be thrown at you or whatever. You know, and the other one, I think, was Mr. Cowie's room, which always seemed to have an ocean of chalk dust along the front of the dais. Why? Why was there more chalk? Was all the chalk dust in the school put there in the morning, every day? just to make a sort of snowdrift. I don't know why. But there it was. But it's these other rooms that always interested me. These other separate spaces. These other strange, sometimes meaningless rooms, which probably had a function sometime in the 1850s or 1860s, when there were other functions and other purposes for the school, when there was possibility that at one stage there was going to be borders on the top, when other things might happen. So this secret geography became a bit of an obsession of mine. I actually, at one stage, had a map of the entire building with all these rooms, trying to work out how they fitted together, and never quite managed it. It's a bit... You ever seen the film Harry Potter? You know the way the stairs keep moving in that film? It's just like that. So, I mean, rooms. I mean, the staff room was the obvious one. That was the forbidden space. That was the space that we didn't get into. I actually did get into it. Not late at night, or chasing Mr. Graff's skeleton or anything like that. I actually went in when I did my teaching observation when I was doing my PGCE. And I thought, where can I do observation? Where can I go and learn to teach? Get learn to teach, love, you know. So I applied to Shaw Street, and Mr. Clarkson said, you know, you could come along for a week, but don't let me see you. I said, okay, fair enough. Okay. And I did, and I stayed out of his way, and it was fine. But I'm ashamed to admit it, I spent the last day playing snooker in the staff room, and in fact clearing out someone's pocket on that one. It's pretty high stakes. But there's a... How many of you actually knew there was a second staff room? Ah, the ladies' staff room at the back of the hall. There's the secret geography. Something we wandered around for so long that we missed it. Because none of us were ladies, so we didn't go in the ladies' staff room, but I accidentally found it one night, looking for something else. I was actually looking for the boiler house, because I wanted to see what was in the boiler house. Not any old boilers. They were rust and bucyrus boilers, and they're very rare. They're not there now. I've actually stripped down a rust and bucyrus boiler, but that's another story. So I'm going to take you through some of those secret spaces, some of those secluded rooms, some of those places that we've never actually seen. We'll see how many of them you might know yourselves. So, I mean, first of all, the ground floor. Go through those wonderful Art Nouveau gates, those blue metal gates. And in front of you, of course, is that rather wonderful clock that never seemed to work. It's been permanently stuck at 2 since 1914, with a chimer on it that never chimed anything. It's as fact as useful as the bell in Glasgow Cathedral. There it was dangling in front of you. And in front of you was that long, awful queue that led you to that long, awful meal in the canteen. You know, the inevitable cabbage agony. I mean, it was an awful summer when they rebuilt the canteen, and we were fed food brought in from another school. I think it was around about 1976 or 77. We lived on what seemed to be powdered mashed potato, baked beans and cheese pie for an eternity. And I've never touched any of them since. I can't bear the sight of any of these things. But just along there, as you're queuing, you probably wouldn't be aware, but there was a little room off the side. A long, narrow room at about 45 degrees to that corridor. Anybody ever notice it? Do you know what was in there? It was stuffed with paper. It was the most extra. I actually worked out what had happened, and years before recycling ever became fashionable, Mr. Clark and Mr. Hughes had a paper recycling wheeze going on in there. They were raising money for school funds by stacking up tons and tons of paper, which disappeared, and various selected scouts went in, because they knew how to tie knots, and tied these newspapers into bundles, which were then sort of thrown into a truck sometime at the end of the year. What a wonderful fire list to put underneath the school. Yes. Did anybody think that at the time? No. Yeah, let's stick a load of paper down there. Oh, and probably someone will be in there having a smoke sooner or later. Brilliant. But yeah, that's the first space. On the ground floor, incidentally, was also the location of the sick bay. And I have a Mr. Derbyshire tale about the sick bay. Yeah. Do you remember the time I got tossed off that bloody trampoline and got knocked out? No. Any more like that, you're out. I was thrown from the trampoline and landed on my head and knocked out stone cold. And I remember Mr. Christopherson leaning over me and saying, "What day is it? What day is it?" I said, "It's Tuesday, it's games, and I wish it was bloody well at home." He said, "You'll get detention for that." I said, "Anything but here, mate." I was carted to the sick bay and I was violently ill because I had concussion for about an hour and a half. And sporadically Mr. Derbyshire would put his head round the door and say, "You've been sick again, you can clear that up." Oh. He'd come back, "It's got worse, I know, oh." Tony the caretaker put me out of misery, did it for me, but I ended up in hospital for 3 days, no sympathy. Forget it. Your head had to be hanging off. So, bingo. The sick bay. Let's go on the central staircase. Thankfully, unlike in Harry Potter films, it stays in one place, but it's an interesting staircase. And at the top of it, whoever went into the CCF armoury? Did you go into it legally? Okay, I'm just checking this. This was an intriguing place. I mean, there you are, you're in a room, it's sort of like armour plated. There are guns in there, there's explosives in there. There are objects in there that, quite frankly, probably would frighten the Boers out of South Africa. Why did it reek of pipe smoke? Who was the pipe smoke? Who smokes a pipe in a room full of ammunition? It's not me. Bingo. Fair enough. You know, olive green painted metal. I mean, it just reminded me of being inside a tin of bloody beef. And incidentally, CCF had another room on the top floor, which was also full of olive green. Now, this one actually didn't contain any firearms, even though it was armour plated. But for some strange and peculiar reason, it smelt of feet and cigarette smoke. And Mr. Graff presided in there. Mr. Langford never ever went up the stairs. I think he didn't like the smell. He just wouldn't go there. After I'd been there a few times, I wouldn't go there. Funny place for a garden room. I think the tea was better downstairs in the woodwork room. The tea up there was perennially awful. How about the assembly hall? I began to think about the assembly hall in a totally different way when Mr. Pritchard took me in and said, "You do realise it's a Tudor theatre." And that's probably been one of the reasons why I've always had my love of Shakespeare. Actually realising what a wooden O could look like, what the acoustics might be like even without a roof on. But that's another room that's totally riddled with extra spaces that possibly weren't known about. It has its entrances and its exits. I'm putting on here, that's Shakespeare. As well as its robing rooms and its strange storage. Under the stage there was a vast storage space which was a rather marvellous fire risk when I remember breaking it, going into it one day. In fact, Graham Holmes and I broke into it one day to find out what was behind it. We got the lock up in about 25 minutes to see the intriguing collection of theatrical memorabilia and explosive materials, incendiary materials that were hiding under there. It took us about 3 weeks to actually clear the lot of it into some sort of order, and then erect a table tennis table, and also a tea urn and various other objects, and that became the unofficial common room for those who didn't like the six-room common room. But it was a vast space with 2 little side rooms, big enough to put a couple of desks in. Strange, nobody knew it was there. And there were more rooms upstairs. There was one without any glass in its windows at all that seemed to be a repository for pigeon skeletons, by the 100 weight. A room totally full of pigeon skeletons. Why? Probably because there was nowhere else to put them, I don't know. But apart from that, the interesting thing about the assembly hall was the missing top story. We all know that rather great feeling when you get in the third year and you're there on that sort of first floor. You can look down upon the world and feel very grand. But there used to be another story above it, and it was in the form of a set of windows that didn't seem to lead to anything. They were actually originally doors, and there was a second tier of seating, which was marvellously sort of dished into the area, and in actual fact was once used by the Liverpool Philharmonic Society for its auditorium before the Philharmonic Hall was built. And that contained, in 2 separate parts, again rather wonderfully on the right-hand side, the school magazine offices for what was then known as the New Review, in which Nigel Parkinson made his debut as a cartoonist in a little piece called Star Treks, which was a spoof of Star Trek but set on a boat somewhere in the middle of the River Dee. but terribly exciting nonetheless. The chap with the pointy ears looked very good. I think he was called Smock. But I mean, that was a marvellous place. It seemed to be full of all the dead desks that had been removed from classrooms, and the most wonderful hand printing press with an eagle on the top of it that was presumably must have given 3 men a hernia to get it up there in the first place. It's a strange repository of the dead and the useless. And as dusty as anything, but a great place to bunk if you didn't fancy going to assembly that morning. Also on that side was a dead canoe. This was one of those strange things, rather like the strange vessel in the woodwork room that never ever left the woodwork room. The boat that someone had built in woodwork, which was actually too big to get out of the room. It was a full-size boat, and when I went into the school, after the school had closed, everything had been taken away, the woodwork benches had gone, the tools had gone, the light fittings had gone. There was a bloody boat in the middle of the room, sitting there, like the Mary Celeste, without any water. Didn't anybody read the instructions? Couldn't they make it? Oh, no, I won't get involved in this. But upstairs on that top floor, someone had made a canoe in glass fibre, and it was finished, and it was polished, it was beautiful, it had a name on it. They couldn't get it out the door because it was too long. It was at 90 degrees to the door, there's no way you could turn it. Are we all mad? We just hopelessly broke, I don't know. Okay. There's one little thing. Apparently there was a massive room over the light fitting. But no one ever had gone up there, probably because they were worried about falling through the light fitting and plummeting to the ground below like in a James Bond film. But there was that light fitting, which apparently had a windlass attached to it, and which slowly could make its way down to ground level, so you could change the light bulbs. I've seen it happen once. I'd love to have seen it happen again, but once was enough. And then finally, the corridor that didn't lead to anything was one of my absolute favourites. It was actually below what had once been the entrance to the top tier of the gallery. And it stretched from 2 classrooms across the top of the staircase. And it was full of dusty French novels, which I think belonged to somebody in the French department. They'd never been read. Possibly even scurrilous French novels. Maybe the devil writes out in French. Le diable goes flying, or something. I don't speak French. But, so, I'd love to get onto that. I never did. That was the one thing. There was a locked room, a locked door that would have got you on that. And if I could have got that key, I would have explored. I was doing urban exploration before I invented it. But what a marvellous thing to actually have a place where there are rooms that you don't know about, and rooms that are constant and eternal surprise. Where they're not, probably. No eye knew ever got onto the roof, where I believe there was a working World War II siren. Around about the size of a dustbin with a cranky handle on the back. I was told this by someone who said they'd been up there in the 40s, but I was told it was still there because it was too big to go down. It's probably made by the guy who made the boat, or the canoe. I mean, I doubt the roof would have taken the weight of anybody who went up there. One of those things, that room next to the CCF room on the top floor was the minute there was anything like a rain shower, there was a mustering of buckets the full length of it, and dripping noises the full time. I could go on for hours, because I still find myself fascinated by the shape of that building, fascinated by the space within it. I won't, because I strongly suspect the mutterings of insides and bars and things are appealing to other people in the room, but I will suffice it to say that had I not been educated in a mock Tudor edifice, full of secret rooms and lead-paned windows, and a library as big as I could ever wish for in myself, and a bountiful cast of eccentrics and characters, both in the masters and in the boys,